Carson Price for. Almost had a run out on me there, Mike. Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. Welcome to the program. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. And as always, Carson Price, presentation of Bet365. Matt Sakaris alongside Jeff Paterson sitting in for Blake Price today. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches and conducting things. Thank you once again for filling in.
Should have worn a dark suit going to a funeral tonight.
Well, you were at a birthday celebration, yes. So happy belated to S-Pat, Shannon.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking of this on the drive coming in. You'll get your 82 badge again this year. How many consecutive Canucks games have you covered?
That's a good question.
Everyone for how many years?
Oh, I've probably 12 or 13.
Okay. I knew it wasn't all 25, but I figured you were on a pretty good run here, Ripken-esque.
Yeah, I mean, you go back 10-40, had the rights, was involved then got out on the road. I don't think, in terms of covering, like I haven't gone to every home game. I skipped the two Taylor Swift nights this year. I just didn't want the bother of everything that was going on. So I took a pass and watched those games from the studio, as we do all the road games as well. But it's been a long time since I have missed working a Vancouver Canucks game.
Well, you got one
more
to go.
So I'm well-versed in seasons coming to disappointing
Yeah,
games.
exactly. And you'll want to catch Jeff and Irf on Rink-Wide Vancouver for the final time this season. Our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question today: will Brock Boeser's final game as a Canuck be emotional for you? You can vote yes. You can vote no. Do so at the Sakaris Price X and YouTube channels. What are you thinking here, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it will be a little bit. And I guess stranger things have happened than this being the last game, but I think we're all heading into feeling pretty strongly that it can be. And I just think of a young guy that, a first-round pick that's played over 500 games for this organization, who has scored some big goals, has scored a lot of goals through his time. He's 8th in goals all time as a member of the Vancouver Canucks, 12th in points. I think of the guy that scored in his NHL debut in his hometown after turning pro with his parents reading the lineup. A great moment.
Adam Kiersenblatt of the Hockey News has done the math. It is almost exactly 3,000 days since that night in Minnesota where his late father, Duke, and his mother, Lori, read out the starting lineup. Nice touch there by
I think what gets lost, like we all remember that moment, but this heralded goal scorer coming out of North Dakota scored 4 goals in the 9 games he played.
That's right.
And gave you an indication of what was to come. And then he scored 29 in 62 games. That was a 40-goal pace in his rookie season.
And boy, Jeff, did the market need that, right? Like everybody at that point was aware that the glory days of 2011 were over, that the core parts of that team were fading into the twilights of their career, and in some cases were moving on or had already been moved on. He did not precede Thatcher Demko in terms of being a draft pick, but it was just 1 year later. And of course, Demko was at Boston College, was a second-round pick. Like you thought, okay, that's a halfway decent goaltending prospect. But we had no idea of knowing at the time that Thatcher Demko was going to turn into the NHL star that he was. Whereas with Boeser, from the moment he stepped on the ice at North Dakota, it was clear that this was a very good player. He was a top college player quickly. And when he got to Vancouver, boy, did he breathe life and optimism into a fan base that sorely needed it.
Yeah, and he looked the part, right?
Oh.
Like, leading man.
Remember the draft night in Florida, someone came up to us and said, not only is he a good hockey player, but guys, you've got a young Robert Redford. And I was like, yeah, he does actually look like a young Robert Redford.
I just have spent a few days here sort of reminiscing, and I think in that rookie season of those 29 goals where he flat out beat goalies like Henrik Lundqvist and Carey Price, stared them down, picked his spot, and boom, and scored goals that we just hadn't seen. Scored by a Vancouver Canuck in a while. I think in the 4-goal game on opening night last year against Edmonton that set the pace and the tone for the 40-goal season. The first, and we'll see if there's another one, but the first in his career. Had never been to 30 at that point and then gets to 40 last year. Of course, the goals in Nashville in Game 4 in the playoffs last year when the chips were down and came through and then not to be around and able to play Game 7 against the Edmonton Oilers had to be crushing too. The one thing for me, Matt, is that like a lot of people will look at Brock Boeser and say injury prone. Injuries are a huge part of the Brock Boeser story.
Never played 82, played 81 last year.
And of course, Game 82 was in Winnipeg. They left him behind for the road trip. He could have played that one. But I just going back and looking, the last 5 seasons for Brock Boeser, I think he's missed something like 25 games.
It's not a ton. 71, 74, 81, 74. He'll play 75th
And like this
tonight.
year, he gets cheap shotted by Tanner Jeannot. Like, that's not his fault. That's not injury prone. That was just a crappy hit by a guy that had no business doing that. Mm-hmm. And so I would say, yes, in the early going, but the last 5 years, and if you miss 5 to 7 games a year, I don't think that makes you injury prone. That's life in a contact sport.
He gets drafted in Fort Lauderdale. And later that night, myself, Blake, our producer, Mike Whittingham, are out for dinner on the Fort Lauderdale Strip, pretty late dinner, too, after the first round. And lo and behold, the Boeser family is at the big table, a few tables over from us. Brock had come down and done the interview with us after being selected in our broadcast location there at the rink, Panthers home facility. And so we went over, we introduced ourselves, we spent some time with Duke and with Lori, and some of Ben Hankinson, his agent, was there, and some other well-wishers. His brother Paul was very enthusiastic, sat there and asked Blake and I 1,000,001 questions. And really from that moment on, at least for us and soon for the Canucks fan base after that debut in Minnesota, we got to watch him grow up. I mean, he came here very young. As mentioned, he represented hope at a time when there wasn't much of it. He was very open with his life, with his story, his associations back in Minnesota. Of course, his father's health. Over the years, he made us feel like we knew him and knew the Boeser family. And, of course, the Boeser family went through so much during his time here. He's a feeler. He's an emotional guy. We've seen that before. And I would suspect that when the crowd salutes him tonight that he will be emotional again. And I think that's appropriate. I voted yes just because when I see people crying, I feel like I cry as well.
Well, and I think, remember when Bruce Boudreau was ready to scratch him on Hockey Fights Cancer Night?
Oh, my goodness, yes.
And he was emotional that day, and then Dakota Joshua either came down with something or the organization helped Dakota Joshua come down with something that allowed Brock to get back into the lineup. Then he scored that night, too.
A beloved player in all factions of the dressing room. I did not hear a single contrary word about Brock Boeser over his 9 seasons here. It seemed like he just effortlessly and seamlessly meshed with all corners of that dressing room. Jeff, needless to say, there was a big split this year between Elias and JT Miller, and one of the things that we heard consistently throughout was that was troubling for Brock. He viewed himself as one of the guys who was, glue in that room, keeping people together and having friendships and associations with all corners of the room. And so, this was a difficult season for him, not just because of that concussion, not just because he's down from 40 goals, but also that he watched people that he was quite friendly with not be able to get along, not be able to pull on the rope together and lead the Canucks to success.
Yeah, and look, he's had the label Brock Star, attached to him. But this is a low-key, just a solid dude. He is. He is
Minnesota nice, as they say.
No, I mean, he's down to earth. He hasn't forgotten those Midwestern roots without a doubt. I've told this story before on maybe this show, but other shows as well. In those years when I was out traveling, and I guess it was the first year that I was out traveling because Botch was still with us, and we were, in all places, the locker room at XL Energy Center after a practice in Minnesota. And I was chatting up Brock, and Botch was within earshot. But it was just me and Brock having a conversation. And I've done this far too many times throughout my career. It's probably happened to you. It happens to most in the media where you try to get a question out, and it doesn't quite come out the way you want.
Yep.
So Marblemouth me is trying to convey the question that made perfect sense in my head, but it wasn't happening in real time. And Botch caught wind of this, and he started cackling as only Botch could at me fumbling and stumbling. Well, then Brock started laughing at Botch's reaction, and before you know, the three of us, I mean, it was just one of those moments that kind of stuck with me, obviously because we lost Jason, and as I was thinking about Brock's career in totality here. So, yes, just a guy that, again, not the most outspoken player,
no,
not a great quote necessarily, but always had time and took the questions on it. Yeah,
thoughtful answers. That's the other thing I've always appreciated about Brock. Like, there are not a lot of regular human interactions in interview settings, particularly in the National Hockey League, which, the players are so cliche-ridden, stage-managed, PR-trained, that it's just not an authentic interaction. I always felt like Brock's interactions with the press and by conduit the fans had a genuineness to them, an authenticity.
Sure, and you think of the exit meeting a couple of years ago when we first learned of how close his father was to passing.
Yep.
And Ben Kuzma asked an honest question, and it just struck Brock in that moment, and he had to step away from the podium, and I think everybody felt for him right then and there.
For sure.
As we
saw his teammates react to him too. They realized part of their role was to support Brock during his.
But as we sit here and we wax poetic about the decade that has been for Brock Boeser, again, you're reminded that first it was Bo, and now Brock probably, and who knows, maybe Demko or Petey, who's going to be the next one out the door. The pieces of this once promising core just getting stripped away. And it's a reminder of what could have been, and the notion that potential is just that. It's potential, and unless it's realized, then you don't have a whole lot to show.
Well, and of course, this core piece could have been stripped away a couple of years ago, right?
Or weeks ago.
Yeah, well, a trade request, and a trade request that was ultimately rescinded by Brock Boeser. And I think that's also part of the story here, that when the going got tough, he went down the road that a lot of NHL players do, and that is, okay, maybe it's time for me to move on, and then recommitted and rededicated himself to this franchise. Canucks tried to. There was no takers at that point on a big ticket. So then he recommitted and he rededicated himself. He took Rick Tocchet's good counsel and changed the way he went about training in the summer. Remember, he used to play in the Beauty League.
Got out of the Beauty League.
Got into a more fruitful training, off-season summer training program for him. Came back the better player and had his career season last year. And I think that's also a commentary on Brock Boeser, not just the player he is, but also the person he is. And if this is, in fact, his last game as a Vancouver Canuck and his last chance to perform for the fans at Rogers Arena, I'm hoping he has a big night, and I hoping the crowd recognizes that and salutes him appropriately. The daily poll question, a presentation of Surrey Mitsubishi. Everybody at the dealership wants to get you into a new or pre-owned vehicle with some savings. As we've been telling you for weeks now, it's $500 off per goal on a new or pre-owned vehicle. So get yourself to the dealership. You got one more opportunity here after tonight's game to reap some of those savings. Surrey Mitsubishi is located at 13820 104th Avenue. Score more, save more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Okay, let's get to our top story. It's brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, and Foolish Winery. Final game of the season. Final game for Brock. Final game for Pius Suter. Final game for Elias Pettersson or Rick Tocchet. Likely the end of an era, but which eras end tonight for the Vancouver Canucks? They face the Vegas Golden Knights, locked into 10th place in the West, 15th in the draft lottery, with a 1.1% chance of jumping those 10 spots to pick number 5. It is team awards night. We have a very good suspicion that Quinn Hughes is going to win team MVP and best defenseman. Does he win the most exciting player as well? Does someone like Kiefer Sherwood take home those honors? And Jeff, who is your unsung hero for the Vancouver Canucks in season 24-25?
Well, I think Kiefer Sherwood is going to win it, even though we have talked him up repeatedly as the NHL hits king. But it is
everybody is sung in this market.
It's a popularity contest. So honestly, for me, the guy that didn't get a lot of press and a lot of run is Derek Forbort. And obviously, season comes to an unfortunate end the other night. But when you think of once he became a regular in this lineup just ahead of Christmas, the penalty kill took off, as Rick Tocchet likes to talk about with his arrows. And look, he's the very definition of a stay-at-home defenseman. He's not here for the fanfare, but he was a very quiet, nice addition to the lineup. It lost his father early on and then got hurt, and so really it took him until mid-December to become a fixture in the lineup. But I would say of the guys that don't get talked about an awful lot, I would probably throw my vote at Derek Forbort.
He really progressed as the season went on, including offensively.
Saw some moments there,
and frankly, Jeff, I mean, we talked a little bit about yesterday the bottom six, whether that's fixed, slotting the 4 forward lines. I think there's a real solid case for bringing Derek Forbort back, and then you're done on defense, right? Like, do you see it that way? One more veteran third pair addition, low cost, and that's pretty much all that's required on this defense core?
I think this will get more play as we get past the
season. There's the Wheelander situation, but we're anticipating he will sign.
But, I mean, we know that they need elite talent up front, but you know what else they need after a season like this one? They need some character in that locker room. And Derek Forbort, again, just a veteran presence, doesn't say a lot, but I think had the respect of the guys in that room. I do wonder if that's on the organizational wish list here, is to bring in a couple of guys that really can hold that locker room to account after the way things got off the rails this year.
As for Brock, and as we mentioned, expecting an emotional send-off here. Now, look, he's an unrestricted free agent. Teams don't tend to like to jump the gun on anything. So I'm not sure there's going to be anything formal by way of the video board tonight. But this is also an extremely savvy hockey market. I suspect Rick Tocchet puts him in the opening lineup so that he can be announced. I also suspect that Rick Tocchet will send him out for a late face-off, and I imagine the crowd will recognize and respond accordingly. He will play his 554th regular season game as a Vancouver Canuck tonight. That is 22nd all-time. He played 29 more in the postseason, 215 goals, Jeff, including playoffs. He's 8th all-time on the regular season side of things, 457 points, including playoffs, 12th all-time for the Vancouver Canucks. He is 3 points behind JT Miller. If he were to have a big night here, he would pull into a tie for 11th with his former teammate. 73 power play goals. That's 7th all-time in Canucks history. 1 tonight, and he ties Stan Smyth for 6th. And 28 game-winning goals, which is in a tie for 9th all-time in Canucks history. If he were to get the winner tonight, he would tie Tony Tanti for 8th place all-time.
And I think, too, Matt, I've done the math here, I believe he is 5th all-time among guys that have only played for the Vancouver Canucks. So when we talk about career Canucks, Daniel and Henrik, Stan Smyl, Dennis Kearns, I think are the only 4 that have played exclusively
for the
Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah. And Boeser is not closing this chapter just yet. He met the media this morning, said he was hopeful that something could be worked out. He wasn't willing to concede that this was going to be his final game as a Vancouver Canuck. And look, we know this has been a tortured and tormented franchise over 55 years of existence. Not only no Stanley Cup championships, but also, as Ariel from Canucks Army points out, Boeser is the latest in a long line of long, painful divorces between Vancouver Canucks players and this ravenous fan base. Pavel Bure, of course, once upon a time. You saw the end coming there with a trade request and a holdout. Roberto Luongo, we saw that coming for a long time. In fact, came much after we expected, right? After the Corey Schneider trade. We knew that was going to be the case. A dalliance, a failed dalliance at the deadline that one year in Toronto, but the next year, Roberto's back off to Florida. We got the sense with Bo Horvat, too, right? During that dreadful season a couple of years back where it was clear the Canucks were not going to the playoffs, and ultimately became clear that Canucks management was going to choose to re-sign JT Miller and trade Captain Bo Horvat. Saw the end coming for Marcus Naslund back in 07-08, Jeff, and finished his Canucks career on the same night as Trevor Linden. Saw the end coming for Ryan Kessler as well, right? Knew that was going to be resolved after his trade request. So, yeah, there's a history, there's a lineage of these sorts of moments for the Vancouver Canucks, their fans and signature and legacy players. And I see some fans were on social last night planning a thank you Boeser chant with 6 minutes left. It's number 6 left in the third period. So, yeah, I would hope that the crowd salutes him throatily tonight and shows their appreciation for a good player and, by all accounts, a good person who has been here the last 9 years.
It's funny because every game takes on a life of its own. Like I was thinking the other night, Quinn Hughes matched Alex Edler. I mean, that's a great accomplishment, but it happened as an assist on the overtime winner, and people are heading for the exits. Like there was no sort of moment there. I'm sure it'll be reflected tonight, and I hope he adds to it and gets the record tonight in regulation time so that they can really give him his moment. But it was just kind of funny the way that it unfolded there the other night. Game over.
Yeah.
Record.
Well, he's 1 point away from setting it, 409 points. He's tied with Alex Edler. One more point moves him in a 14th place all-time in Canucks career scoring. And as this gentleman noted earlier in the week, there's a little pressure to get it done tonight because you want to get it done at home in front of the home fans, and you have no guarantees that you're going to start at Rogers Arena next year when the season begins. So we'll track and see if Hughes can get his record this evening. Other numbers we'll be looking at for tonight. Jake DeBrusk came into training camp, one of the great talkers in the National Hockey League, and said his goal was to get to 30 goals after signing the big free agent offseason deal last year and coming over from the Boston Bruins. He is 2 goals away from 30. He's 2 points away from 50 as well, Jake DeBrusk. Connor Garland's been sitting on 49 points here for a few games. One more chance, Connor Garland, to get to 50. Of course, a couple years ago, he had the hat trick in Game 82. Right. So he's Mr. Game 82. I suspect Garland will get to 50 here this evening. One more goal for Pius Suter gets him to 25. 10 better than his career high. And one goal for Kiefer Sherwood gets him to 20 and cements his reputation as one of the best free agent additions across the league.
And we're not expecting a ton of intensity, and yet any hits that he gets tonight just add to his already record-setting total. So where will he top out at season's end? So we'll see if Kiefer Sherwood's looking to deliver a few more hits just to boost the numbers.
This is also the final game for Vancouver Canucks equipment manager Pat O'Neill, or Patty as everybody calls him. 45 years in the National Hockey League. He joined the Canucks in 19 8990. Later in the program, we asked Frank Corrado about Pat, because one of the very first people that new Vancouver Canucks meet is Pat O'Neill, as he gets them sorted with their gear and their sweater and their sweater number. So he has been on the front lines for the Vancouver Canucks in terms of supporting their players over the years. He's an absolutely fabulous guy, Jeff. I know you've spent a lot of time at Rogers Arena. Understated guy, but
not a bad word.
No,
we talk about
true
Brock.
Gentleman.
Did you see he did the intermission with Murph?
I saw that he did with Murph.
He didn't get a police escort, but man, because he was working the bench, they had an execution plan in place to get Pat O'Neill from the bench upstairs to the broadcast area where Dan Murphy spent the intermission with. It was just kind of funny. I overheard them laying out all the sort of plans to make sure that it all went off without a hitch. So, yes, in game, doing an intermission interview.
And I know our friends at Yellow Dog, Mike and Melinda Coghill, John Main, Brad McDonald, Dan Cahill, and the whole team there, they want to salute and congratulate Patty as well. He's a Port Moody resident. They see him at the tasting room there on Brewers Road, as well as up at St. James Well there in Port Moody, where I've bumped into Patty in the past. So anyways, a hearty congratulations to one of the fine gentlemen in the National Hockey League and with the Vancouver Canucks organization for a career well done, 36 seasons of service to the team. Filip Chytil was skating in a regular jersey this morning. Now, we won't play tonight, but we learned a little bit more about his latest ailment and setback. He not only had his 5th career concussion, but he had a virus that went along with it, which compounded matters there for a bit. But he's emerged on the other side of the virus, and Rick Tocchet was talking as though he avoided the worst-case scenario on the concussion side of things.
I still can't understand, though, like, one final morning skate, just keep the non-contact jersey. Let people out there know that...
Don't touch Filip.
Exactly. Don't run into Filip Chytil out there. But, yeah, I mean, it sounds promising. Proof will be in the pudding when training camp rolls around next year, but hopefully with the summer to get away from the rink and just heal up, rest up, and be ready that there's still some good hockey left in Filip Chytil as a Vancouver Canuck.
I asked this of Blake Price and Patrick Johnston last week. We're going to have plenty of time to discuss free agent and trade targets and all of that, Jeff, but the Canucks have been linked to Jack Roslovic in the past. Having a career year with the Carolina Hurricanes, free agent to be, former Winnipeg Jet and Columbus Blue Jacket, who can play center. Could you see a world where they re-sign Pius Suter, sign Roslovic in free agency, and say, okay, that's that. We'll keep Pettersson. One of Chytil, Roslovic, Suter, whomever's going is going to be our second-line center. One of the others is going to be our third-line center. If they're all healthy and going well, Suter, flips over and plays the wing. We'll play Bluger at fourth-line center. We'll play Ratu at fourth-line center. Could you see a world where re-signing Suter and adding Roslovic is the totality of the plan at center ice this summer?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't scream Stanley Cup contender to me.
No, it doesn't. But you, as everybody said, it's going to take a lot to lure a John Tavares, a Matt Duchene, a Sam Bennett here. Mm-hmm. So if you strike out on those free agents, then you're talking about a trade and you're talking about parting with significant assets if you're going to add the sort of center that they require.
Yeah, and then all roads lead back to Elias Pettersson stepping up and being the player that he has been in the past. And organizationally, fingers crossed that he can be again. I wonder, and I was asked about this in a Canucks Army article that I wrote earlier in the week about who's most likely to get traded in the offseason. And I said, hey, I could see Thatcher Demko getting moved. I'm not sure how that goaltending dust is all going to settle. I could see them attaching Nils Höglander to something to try to sweeten the pot. And then I suggested Teddy Bluger, who has been a very good penalty killer, but 5-on-5, there just isn't much there. You've got these young guys pushing from below in Ratu and Max Sasson and others. And then as you talked about, trying to fill out the center ice position, I wonder. I mean, you wouldn't get much for him, but it's in terms of clearing out space to
maybe
allow some of those other guys to step in. Outside of penalty killing, there just hasn't been a whole lot of there
right.
Teddy Blue.
If you feel your penalty killing is good, then I can see it. I mean, he's not fetching much. As you say, it's more about clearing out space for Ratu and Sasson. But, in terms of the re-signing sooner and bringing Roslovic in, Blake and I have been talking about this. If you can't get quality, if you can't get that perfect number 2 center or even number 1 center, if you're doubting Elias, then do you just flood the position with volume and hope the cream rises to the top?
And ultimately, they may have no choice but to attempt
that's
something
it.
like that.
That's it. If nobody's playing ball with you on the trade market, and look, second-line centers are very, very rarely traded to begin with, so there may not be all that many available via trade. And as we've talked about, the free agent market has some quality there, but can you attract those players to an environment that, let's face it, is not a Stanley Cup? Players are not going to view the Vancouver Canucks as Stanley Cup contenders in the here and now. And so to get a guy like Tavares from Toronto, who's been on a perennial playoff team, probably their best season, best chance in a while, Sam Bennett, a Cup champion who's been to 2 straight finals, Matt Duchene, who's looking to end his career by lifting a silver chalice. It's going to take quite a sales pitch to get one of those sorts of players in free agency.
I do wonder. First of all, you wait to see who flames out in the first round of the playoffs and then starts to reconsider the roster that they've built. And just with these matchups, like there are going to be some good teams on the outside looking in after
Colorado or Dallas is out in round 1.
And so Florida and Tampa, I wonder with Florida, I mean, there are a lot of people in hockey that think Sam Bennett, ultimately, they're going to find a way to keep him there. Mm-hmm. But will that mean that somebody else shakes loose off that roster?
Are you talking Lundell there?
I don't know. I'm sort of spitballing, but I think these are some of the avenues. As you can look at who are the pending unrestricted free agents, but ultimately, if a team that had expectations and designs on going deep into the playoffs doesn't get there with its current group, might they look at shaking things up a little? And maybe that's where the Canucks have to be ready to pounce.
Yeah. In terms of Florida, there's still a good amount of cap space available there for Sam Bennett. Not a ton. Mackie Samoskevich has turned into a good player this year. He's an RFA, so he'll get a raise. But looking at the rest of the team, Bobrovsky, the goaltender, is UFA. Anyways, we'll see if Florida, and we'll talk about that more during the summer, is going to be able to keep together a team that has gone to 2 straight Cup finals and may very well make some noise here in these Stanley Cup playoffs as well, starting with a home state battle against the Lightning. Looks like Kevin Lankinen is going to start in goal for the Vancouver Canucks this evening. We knew that Thatcher Demko had been shut down. Didn't think Nikita Tolopilo would get back-to-back starts. So for Kevin Lankinen, who also one of the great free agent signings of last summer, this will be game number 51 for him. He has started at 48. This will be 49. He's on 25 wins. Leads the league in overtime or shootout losses with 10. Trying to keep that save percentage above 900. We noted it in his last start. He crept back up to 901, so wanted to keep it there. 264 goals against average. He's got 4 shutouts this season for the Vancouver Canucks. Vegas dressed a stripped-down lineup in Calgary last night and still won the hockey game. We're expecting a little bit beefier from Vegas tonight. Have you got wind?
No, they're not skating because it's back-to-back. And, they didn't play Eichel, they didn't play Stone, they didn't play Pietrangelo or Hanifin and Aiden Hill. You'd think that, and they've got nothing to play for. So you could understand if they wanted to rest those guys, but I also think these guys want to gear up and get ready for the playoffs. So,
especially,
So I would think a few of those names probably play
Look at their history last year, Jeff. They thought they could just drop Mark Stone in the lineup for game 1. Everything would be tickety-boo, and they wound up losing in the first round. So, yeah, I expected a bit between the teeth season for Vegas. They have delivered, and I would think that Bruce Cassidy wants this team hitting on cylinders going in.
But we are putting you on E's and O's because Vegas lost in a shootout in Calgary.
Oh, sorry. My bad. Calgary lost out on its playoff spot, but they did not lose the hockey game.
Look at those plucky Flames go right down to the shootout wire to win for their home fans. But they knew after 2 periods that they were cooked.
Tyler Myers, he will not play tonight. We knew that earlier in the week when Rick Tocchet disclosed that there's just no sense in playing a 35-year-old veteran. So it'll be 71 games and 24 points, playing 20 minutes and 48 seconds per night. For the big defenseman and Kelowna resident, Myers is the latest Canuck to throw his support behind Rick Tocchet, telling Ben Kuzma of the province, quote, "My experience with Toc has been unbelievable. We have a great relationship. He holds guys accountable, including myself, and what I've really respected and grown to learn more, even in my later years, is the feeling of never being satisfied." We had heard in the past that Tyler Myers, Tocchet has said this, is his best message carrier, that he is the guy that oftentimes takes what the coach is saying and either translates it or reinforces it with his teammates. I says he'll be back next year with a no-move clause. Last Tuesday, Yellow Dog Brewing released their very first large format 15-pack Rescue Lager. And I sampled some of these last night at the Nat at the C's home opener, Jeff, and they get my full hearty review. Every sip of this crisp and refreshing brew contributes to Yellow Dog's passionate partnership with the BC SPCA. And thank you to Melinda, who does great work there for Yellow Dog with the BC SPCA. Together, can help every animal get the chance they deserve. So cheers to Rescue Lager from Yellow Dog. There is more shade, if you will, being distributed to Quinn Hughes, this time from his peers.
How dare they?
The NHL Players Poll came out yesterday, and as Noah Strang of the Daily Hive notes, there is still a pretty firm 1-2 in the eyes of players. Makar got nearly 72% of the vote as the best all-around defenseman, and he's having a marvelous year and is a sensational player, don't get me wrong. I'm filling out my Norris ballot this year, and he's going to be my number one. What I don't get is Quinn just got 7.44%.
Yeah, that one jumped off the page at me too. And I guess I wonder, when is the balloting done? And is it based just on this season, or is it a broader brush who is the best defenseman in hockey? Because Quinn's the reigning Norris Trophy winner. Up until Christmas and his injuries, he wasn't just the front runner to defend his Norris. He was getting legit love for the Hart conversation at the very least. So, if this poll is done earlier in the season,
I don't know.
I'm thinking it's way closer to 50-50.
Well, it's a big group too,
But
and understand, players vote out of loyalty. They vote for friends. They vote for teammates. They vote for ex-teammates.
I'm sure there's a huge group that probably don't even look at their ballot, right? Like
and they voted consensus, too. They just vote reputationally sometimes as well. Here's what I would say. I love this for Quinn Hughes. That's more logs on
fuel,
the fire.
Yeah,
for summer motivation. Okay, fellas, 7.5%. Nearly 1/10 the votes of Cale Makar. Okay, I'll show you next year. We know he's going to have a big summer with his brothers and his dad. The good news, as already noted for the Canucks, is they will not suffer the indignity of being the only Canadian franchise to miss the playoffs this season. Calgary will join them in the Holiday Club, which starts Thursday. And we have all our first-round playoff series set, all but one, where we await the final playoff team in the East between Montreal and Columbus to face the Washington Capitals. But we know we're going to see the Battle of Ontario, the Leafs and Senators. They played 3 times, 3 straight years from 2000 to 2002, and then again 2 years later. The Leafs have won every single playoff series against their provincial baby brothers. Colorado and Dallas, big boy hockey, a function of this divisional playoff format. Winnipeg, you'll see if they can get rid of their playoff bugaboos, particularly Connor Hellebuck against a hard-charging St. Louis team in the second half. LA and Edmonton, the 4th consecutive time This has gone from a 7, 6 to 5 game series, all of them in Edmonton's favor. Can they pull it off for a 4th straight year against the Kings, who have home ice? Vegas and Minnesota, Jersey and Carolina, we've known that for a while, and the Battle of Florida. Which one stands out to you?
Oh, I think the Battle of Ontario. Kind of cool that Travis Green, who was a Toronto Maple Leaf and has been part of those battles as a player, now behind the bench. So good for him and Nolan Baumgartner and Mike Yeo. The Battle of Florida is pretty compelling, too. I mean, those are two heavyweights that know how to win, and only one can emerge from this series. So I'm looking forward to that one. Bottom's falling out for Dallas at the wrong time. Can they fix it? And, Nathan McKinnon, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do when things ramp up here in the playoffs. You mentioned the past. The Jets just look motivated. Connor Hellebuyck just looks so dialed in. But you win the President's Trophy, and your reward is facing the hottest team in hockey in the St. Louis Blues. So certainly something to watch there. And I like the fact that LA Edmonton, 4 years in a row, and you think, okay, maybe that's a little – there's some spice there. It got a little feisty the other night, and that was clearly just setting the groundwork for a matchup. And I don't know if people...
Philip Deneau charged the Oilers for dressing their B-side and trying to hurt them.
And I saw Corey Perry, no surprise, and he's going to be in the middle of things. But I don't know if the casual fans aware, the Los Angeles Kings have lost 5 games in regulation on home ice all year.
They have been extraordinarily defensively. They prevent rush chances. They've gotten goaltending this year. They're not the high-scoring team. They don't have a great power play.
So can they neutralize McDavid and Draisaitl? That's always the question. But you start at home, and then you get a Game 7 if necessary. Home ice has to matter. You play all season that well at Crypto.com. It has to matter. I think they get it right this time. And I think after getting to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, I think the Oilers are going to be out.
I'm with you. I also I really like Steve Valiquette, the former NHL goaltender and the head there of Clearsight Analytics. You'll hear Kevin Woodley often citing those stats. I hear Valiquette on the Kiprio show, and one of the things he talks about is rush chances. That if you're looking for teams that do well in the Stanley Cup playoffs, it is teams that improve in terms of defending the rush year to year. And if you're looking for upset potential, look for teams that don't do very well against the rush. Edmonton is one of those teams that doesn't do very well defending the rush, and particularly in conjunction with their goaltender, Stuart Skinner, who is not particularly great against the rush. So I think absolutely Edmonton is poised to be upset there, and then you've got a hell of a question with Connor McDavid coming.
Yeah.
Right? Because is he going to stick around and continue to try with this group, Leon Draisaitl? And let's face it, an ownership and a management team that has let them down in terms of not being able to fortify and get to a better place on goal prevention over the years.
And the story none of us saw coming, Matt, Andrei Kuzmenko playing Stanley Cup playoff hockey.
He's been good for the Kings. Exactly what they need.
17 points in 21 games.
He's exactly what they need. Basically a power play specialist. They don't have a lot of offense in the quiver. He's one guy that in the half court, as we saw here during his 39-goal season, Jeff, was tremendous.
Playoff hockey's different.
Yeah, very much so.
But he's going to the postseason for the first time in the NHL.
Also, we should mention that Winnipeg-St. Louis, that's Shen versus Shen. Braden versus Luke. I saw Saravelli did a piece on that, and Braden predicted that Luke would cut off all communication during the series with his brother. So looking forward to the Stanley Cup. Playoff season's ending everywhere. As Dave Hall notes, the Kalamazoo Wings, the Canucks ECHL franchise, they're done for the year. The success stories there this year, Josh Bloom, you remember they acquired him from the Buffalo Sabres, a 39-point in 43-game season. And the goaltender, Ty Young, who we've talked about several times during the course of the year. We were wondering, what's Young like? He lost his job in Prince George to a 17-year-old, darn good 17-year-old, though, in Joshua Ravensburgen. Debuted in pro hockey, played in the ECHL, played in the AHL. As Dave Hall notes, one of, if not the best, U22 goaltender in that loop, a .926 save percentage in 22 games. And Abbotsford, their final stretch here in the AHL regular season. They're in Bakersfield tonight. They are tied for second place in the Pacific Division with Ontario on 86 points. They need to sweep these 3 remaining games, Bakersfield, Coachella, and then Ontario, and have Colorado lose their 3 remaining games to gain top spot in the division in a first-round bye. So unlikely that Abbotsford is going to get to those heights, which means they will play in the first round and will play in the first round with home ice advantage. So we'll look forward to seeing the AHL sort itself out and following the baby Canucks and head coach Manny Malhotra in their Calder Cup playoff run. Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta, a fantastic spot to catch all the games, home and away, pregame, postgame, your steps from the arena and the stadium. They have weekly drink specials. Check out the great street food menu. Try the smash burger and the poutine. The arcade that encircles the bar and all the sounds of glee that surround you. 50 West Cordova. Greta Bar, let the games begin. We'll be joined by Frank Corrado coming up here in moments. We talk about the Canucks asking Elias Pettersson to train here in Vancouver. Frank will tell you why he thinks that's a bad idea. And then Laurence Gilman will give us some insight in terms of how you handle a situation like this when you're a front office and have to go out and face the music for, needless to say, a disappointing season. All right, time for our Bet365 bets of the day. Wound up getting the win last night, taking Calgary over Vegas. And you had,
the Ducks, and they looked like they were, good for Minnesota. 2 third-period comebacks here in the last couple of games, win in overtime. We didn't talk about it, but how about Marc-Andre Fleury getting the opportunity to get in there? Nice work on the part of John Hines in the Wild.
Absolutely. Phil got to overtime and made a goaltending change so that Marc-Andre Fleury could have a final bow before the home public in Minnesota. So I'm going back to the same format that I wrote successfully yesterday, and that is the Carolina Hurricanes are dressing a stripped-down lineup against the Montreal Canadiens tonight. Carolina already locked into playoff position. Montreal needs a point to clinch a playoff spot, or they're in peril of getting jumped by the hard-charging Columbus Blue Jackets, who have won 5 in a row. I'm going to take Montreal against the weaker lineup being dressed by Rod Brindamore. Take the Canadiens at -135.
I'm going individual here, and I want to see it, so I hope it happens. Quinn Hughes gets the point that he needs to become the all-time scoring leader among Canucks defenders, but there's not a lot of value in 1 assist for Quinn Hughes. Gets that in his sleep.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think a hard-charging Quinn Hughes, leading by example, game 82, give the fans something to think about, and remember the season. On a positive note, I'm taking him to get 2 assists in this hockey game. Again, we don't know who the Vegas Golden Knights are playing. They may grab defensemen off the street here to round out their lineup in game 82. 2 assists for Quinn Hughes pays out at +330. So,
breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner. Every face-off, hat-trick, power play, shot on goal, penalty shot, every suspenseful minute in between. Amazing. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the Bet365 app. Use code NATION to get in on the game. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Frank Corrado coming up next. Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. This next interview brought to you by the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club. Spring preparations underway. Opening day exciting, May 9th. And they're accepting bookings online for the entirety of the 2025 season. No need to wait. Get those times locked in. And if you do have a group of 12 or more and you're planning a 2025 visit, paramount, you get those times on hold now. The prime times are filling up. And tell them about your group. WhistlerGolf.com/groups. Follow on social media at Whistler Golf. Here he is, former Vancouver Canuck and TSN hockey analyst, Mr. Frank Corrado. Got J-Pat for you today, Frank.
Hey, Frank.
What's going on, fellas? How we doing?
We're all just playing out the string.
We're playing out the string here, Frank. More on that in a second. But first, you caught our interview with Cam Robinson yesterday on the topic of Elias Pettersson and the organization's preference that he stay here in Vancouver and train under their watchful eye this summer, take advantage of the resources that they have available to him. This is as Patrick Alvin lays it out. Your thoughts on that?
Cam said he should not stay in Vancouver. I agree with Cam. He should not stay in Vancouver. He should get as far away from Vancouver, not as far away as possible, but he can't go the whole summer looking at the same four walls at the game rink and be in Vancouver. Like, he has to get out of that environment. Not that Vancouver is a toxic place or anything like that. Vancouver is beautiful. It's lovely in the summer. It's lovely all the time, for that matter. But he needs to just remove himself from the environment. And I think what he needs to do, what like Cam was talking about training with Hughes, that's fine. Like, rent a house in Aurora, Ontario, and go train with Gary Roberts and go be around Connor and Leon and all those guys. And look what Gabe Landeskog is doing now, coming back from his injury that no one thought he was going to play ever again. Like, that's where a guy like Elias Pettersson needs to be, in that training group every single day. He's removed out of the city in Vancouver. You want to talk about resources? That's where the resources are. And he is not under, team pressure when he's there. He's doing what's right for himself with the people that are the best in the world at what they do. So I think that's the play for him. Stockholm, I don't know. Like, you're far away. You're removed from it. Sure, I'm sure there's great training groups that happen there. But like, if I'm Vancouver, I'm saying you don't have to be here, but at least go to Gary. And be there and be around those guys and take advantage of those resources, like really make the investment in yourself. And I think that goes a long way.
So you think it can adversely affect him because not enough of a change? It will feel like a continuum. Is that?
It will feel like things are continuing for him. And I did the train in Vancouver for like a half summer thing. It almost feels like you're doing... It almost feels like you're just doing like the season type workouts in the off season. And then once training camp hits, it's like, well, there's no grand finale to your summer training into your training camp. It's weird. Some guys like it. Some guys thrive on it. I said to myself, like, after that, I think I need to just not be at the team facility going forward when it comes to summer training. But yeah, I think the best thing for him is go make the investment with the best players in the world. Don't worry about being around the team facility. Like, a dumbbell is a dumbbell at the end of the day, but yeah. you can't replace being around the best players in the world and the guys that are preparing themselves the best in the world. And I think that's the investment that a guy like that needs to make, especially if we're still talking about, tendinitis or whatever's bothering him. Well, go see Gary Roberts. Like, go be a part of that.
What does it say to you, Frank, that the organization wants to monitor his summer training?
It tells me they don't trust him. They don't trust that he can take full autonomy over his summer training and push himself as hard as he needs to be pushed, and perhaps do the right thing. Like, you're never going to be able to control someone completely away from the rink, but I feel like, having him in their environment would feel more comfortable for them, but it's not going to be as beneficial to the player. So while they might think it's comfortable, maybe it's actually too comfortable for the player. Like, he's not pushing himself out of his own comfort zone. He's not learning anything new. He's not taking his summer training to a different place, like where it's never been before. Guys talk about that all the time, right? Like, they make a change in the summer and they go somewhere else and they say, this was the best summer I ever had. Like I took my body to heights that I never thought possible. And then like they can have great seasons. I think that's the type of mindset and investment Pettersson needs to have this offseason. And I just think you are who you're surrounded by at times. And if he's just in a gym there by himself in Vancouver, or if there's a small group of guys kicking around, like it's hard to create the environment that he would get being around the most elite players in the game and what they do every single summer. And I think it would be quite an eye-opening experience for him to get there and see it and do it.
Frank, he's a 26-year-old guy with all the money in the world. Like, it seems crazy to think that he's not going to be given some liberty to go and enjoy his life for a little while here in the early going. I'm just curious, in your mind, and maybe from your playing days, like, how did you approach the offseason? When did you get back on the ice? How much of the offseason for you was the work you did in the gym as opposed to trying to ramp things up to be ready for the start of a new season?
My off seasons were different than guys that were truly established, right? Like, I always felt like I couldn't take too much time off because I wanted to get some kind of advantage on my training. Plus, I was always the kind of guy, Jeff, that was, 6'1", 190, 195 pounds. And in the exit meeting, it was always, okay, bigger, faster, stronger next year. So I would go home and I say, well, I already took 2 weeks off. Did I get any bigger? Maybe in the wrong way. Did I get any faster? No. Did I get any stronger? No. Okay, so it's like I got to get going here. Like I'm in hashtag bulking season for lack of a better term. But I think for and it depends on what you've been through. In your season. Like if you're still nursing something, well then now there's a rehab component to your off season before you really get into moving the needle. So that needs to be taken into account. So if you think you're going to do the old, going to take a month off, don't even look at anything, and then get back into it, well, you probably can't do that. Like you have to slowly ramp up and start your rehab and do your treatments and then work yourself into an off season, and that makes your off season longer. But I think like if you're looking at it, as like a one size fits all, basically, like this would be your token model. It's like you take three, depending on how far you go in the playoffs. Let's say you miss the playoffs. You're taking 3.5, maybe 4 weeks off. Then you start your stage one of things where you start ramping up, get moving again. Then you get into your heavier portion of the summer before skating really ramps up. And then once you hit the ice, you're not necessarily lifting as heavy because you're mixing in your ice, and then you start, 2-3 days a week, then 4 days a week, 5 days a week. By the time you hit the end of August, you should feel like you're basically ready to go. Like I always wanted to feel like I was ready for camp on Labor Day, even though we still had 2 weeks to play, 2 weeks to train. But it really varies on everyone's situation. It's not like a one size fits all thing. And I think that brings us back to Pettersson, where you go to someone like Gary. I'm just using his as an example because all the best guys go there and it's, kind of become world renowned. But you go there and he's going to lay out a plan for you that is different than what the Canucks might lay out, might be better, probably is better. And then he's going to lay out a plan that is different than what Connor's doing, what Leon's doing, what Darnell Nurse is doing, what Landeskog is doing. And it's like, this is to get Elias Pettersson, the best version of him before training camp. And I think that's important for him to have that like tailor-made thing by, the best people in the world, where he might not know. Like he might not know exactly what he needs. He doesn't know how many weeks he should take off. He doesn't know when phase 1 turns into phase 2. Might have a general idea based on what he's done, but at least you're going to get the answer, and it's probably going to be the right answer if you go to a place like that.
We're expecting an emotional night for Brock Boeser tonight at Rogers Arena. Has been here 9 seasons, 554 games, 29 more in the postseason for the Vancouver Canucks. Been a career Canuck and was really the first vestige of hope that the Canucks might be able to turn it around with a young core coming out of North Dakota. What's it like in the room and on the bench when you know that there's a heavy game and potentially some pretty special crowd reactions coming? for one of your teammates.
That's an interesting one. I never played on. I never had a teammate that was going through that, but I played in the Ryan Smyth last game, which I kind of saw went places on Twitter, which I appreciated in a sarcastic way. Because I told him that I met him. I told him when I met him, I was 10 years old playing at the Brick tournament. I don't know why I felt compelled to tell him that as I was shaking his hand. Like, I'm sure he couldn't care less, but I was like, I don't know. I'm just going to tell him I met him when I was 10 at this Italian restaurant in Edmonton called Sorrentino's, because he walked in and he ordered a bunch of pizzas and we were all sitting there and we're 10 and we're like, holy, that's Ryan Smyth. Anyways. And I got chirped so hard for that. You would have think like I personally offended various people by how hard I got chirped for that.
Who chirped you?
Everyone. Literally everyone. Anyways, but I do remember that game. I remember the lead up to that game, like the crowd reaction every time he stepped onto the ice, every time he touched the puck. Like you could hear there was a rise in the crowd, and the ovation that he got at the end of the game was pretty amazing to see, even from a visitor's point of view. So it's rare that we get games like this. It's somewhat unique. I don't necessarily like Ryan Smyth was Captain Canada. Like that was on a different level, but I think like the Vancouver fans are very appreciative of the players and very appreciative of a guy like Brock Boeser and what he's done, what he's meant here. And think about Boeser's journey, like comes into the league, kind of sets the league on fire his first year. I remember him putting a hat trick up on us when I played for Pittsburgh on a Saturday night. Like that was a big night. He arrived right away. And went through a lot of hard times, right? Like, away from the rink, there was, some sadness, some tragedy that followed him. And he pushed through, and he was very dedicated, and he was a great Vancouver Canuck. And it is truly a shame if this is it, like the way it's going to end. The season the Canucks had, the way the whole trade deadline kind of shook out, the comments afterwards, about not getting good enough offers. Brock Boeser deserved better than that, considering what he put into this organization over his time here.
It's an interesting dynamic because he's still under contract. The organization hasn't come out and said, we're not bringing him back. So in the eyes of the Vancouver Canucks, like, I don't think they're going to do anything to mark the night. But I asked this question, Frank, does Rick Tocchet have a role in this? And what does it mean to a player if Rick Tocchet puts him out there for the opening face-off so that he gets to be announced, one last time as one of the starters for the Vancouver Canucks?
I think that's a no-brainer. And Tocchet's like, he's such a classy guy. He gets it. Like, he would understand the whole dynamic. You know what I mean? Like, there's these types of moments, they don't really happen. Like, they're not commonplace occurrences. So anytime, like, he's kind of holding the keys, really, to how cool of a moment this could be for the fans and for Brock. So it's a no-brainer. I don't think you would even think twice about it.
Most in it, with the exception of Mike Babcock, and everyone remembers the Modano story in Detroit, I think most coaches get this.
Yeah.
The occasional one, I think, maybe needs some reminding from somebody on the staff because they're focused on something else. But I think when brought to the attention of a head coach, because they're fans just like us, right? They understand the dynamic between the players, the participants on the ice.
Come on, Matt. You're coaching to win. You got to get the hard matchup right off the opening face-off.
18,000 people. So,
like, remember, Babs did it to Spezza, too. Spezza came to play for the Leafs.
That's right.
And his first game at home,
and
he healthy scratched
him.
He had bought the suite. He had hundreds of people at the game. And I can't remember, was it Drew Shore, Devon Shore, one of the Shores? It was like, need Shore in the lineup because I need the penalty killer. It's like, dude, you got guys that can penalty kill, man. Anyways,
look how he got crucified for that, right, Frank? Like, everybody. Exactly. So I think coaches are attuned to this.
Is it worth it? Like, you think that was worth it for him? No,
exactly.
Like, come on. But like,
I would think he not only opens the game, but I would bet if there's a face-off late in the game, Tocchet sends him out for that as well, so that can be a moment.
I totally agree. Agree. And Brock Boeser's been nothing but a good soldier for the team. Like, let him have his moment. Right. Let the fans have their moment. and there's just nothing to gain from it. And how do you feel afterwards if you take it away? Like, doesn't that feel icky afterwards?
Exactly.
Like, who wants to live with that?
Boeser strikes me as the type of guy that, if you don't get along with Brock Boeser, it's probably because of the guy in the mirror.
Oh, and
not
Besser's coming,
Brock.
like, when he returns to Vancouver next year, like, he's putting up a hat trick. First game.
Because that's what he does.
Yeah.
Is there any doubt?
Especially against you and the Penguins, Frankie. That's where he feasted.
Oh, dude, he saw me coming from a mile away. Like, I went no bucket in warm-up, too. And he's like, that guy is a pigeon, and I will be putting up a hat trick tonight.
But, of course, the hat trick you mentioned there, and it was on Hockey Night.
I remember.
Was Matt Murray with he got lucky.
He got,
right?
Oh, right.
He got lucky.
That's right. Yes, Murr did say that.
Yeah. Who's lucky now,
lucky
Matt?
Hat trick.
Do you have a Pat O'Neill story? It's Patty's last game here as well as equipment manager.
I just want to say Patty is unbelievable. Like, what an amazing guy. He treats everyone so well, goes the extra mile for all his guys. Really makes you feel comfortable around the room, around the team. Like, you almost don't know what to say about a guy like Patty, but he was really tremendous. Right from the moment you kind of step in as an 18-year-old, your first training camp always makes you feel like you're welcome and you belong, and made it feel, special. No matter how long you were around, that you were, for however long it was, if it was just training camp or if it was a little portion of the regular season, you were an NHLer. And Patty really treated you that way. And I have such an appreciation for the time and the work that he puts in, and how he treats everyone so in such a first-class way.
Lastly here, buddy, I'm going to need you to explain on behalf of your NHLPA brethren here. Quinn Hughes can set the franchise mark, points by a defenseman, with a single point tonight, breaking Edler's record. He's the reigning Norris Trophy winner. We have talked about it all season long. How many players in the league, if any, are more valuable to their team than Quinn Hughes this year? And yet the players' survey, 72% vote Cale Makar the best defenseman in the league. Only 7.5% vote for Quinn. Make that make sense for me, Frank.
Okay. The players' poll is a couple things. There's some players who really care about it and value it. There's some players that it's just an obligation that they have to fill it out. And there's probably some players that don't even fill it out because guys are just aloof and don't care about certain things. Like, this is the year. I think Makar is going to win the Norris. Like, he's had an unbelievable year. 30 goals, all that kind of speaks for itself. I think if you look at it, you say, well, Quinn Hughes is second. He probably should be second this year. It's just, overwhelming majority voted for Cale Makar. And I think that's not a slight to Quinn in any way, shape, or form. That's just Cale Makar was a dominant force this year, and Quinn Hughes missed some time. So there's also guys that may not have played against him, depending on the way the schedule shook out. And you also have to keep in mind with the player poll, there's a lot of NHL players that get deeply entrenched in opinions. Like, the goalie one is fascinating for me. It's like, Vasilevsky was 1, Shesterkin was 2, Hellebuck was 3. Hellebuck's going to win the Vezina, and he could win the Hart. Like, I wouldn't put it past the voters. And it's like, the players say he's the third best goalie. Why? Well, like, Vasilevsky, we know what he's about. Shesterkin, we know what he's about. I mean, you can get deeper into the technical aspect of all three goaltenders, and but yeah, I think sometimes with this player poll, there's just opinions that become deeply entrenched. I remember playing for Toronto. You guys watch The Office, right? You know the show The Office? They had that debate on whether Hilary Swank was hot or not. Do you remember this? And it was, I think, the 15-16 season. We had a debate. If you were picking first overall again, who would you have chosen, McKinnon or Barkov? And this was when McKinnon was hadn't really, he hadn't popped yet. He hadn't had the massive year yet. And Barkov was really good, underrated at the time. It's half the team was McKinnon, half the team was Barkov. And the argument would just kind of reignite at certain portions of the season. And it's guys just got more and more entrenched in their opinion. So, I mean, That's part of the player poll, I guess.
Yeah. And of course, some voting for buddies, some allegiance to teammates or past or present. I get it. Frank, marvelous stuff. Next week, we'll have the Stanley Cup playoffs on, and we'll have heard from the Vancouver Canucks in postmortem. So looking forward to that hit already. Have yourself a terrific 7 days.
All right, fellas. Have a good one.
Secure some price from the historic Wall Center in this next segment, brought to you by your Pacific Toyota dealers and the Toyota BZ4X. This is the ideal Vancouver vehicle, the ultimate commuting vehicle, full access to the HOV lanes, 100% electric. You plug it in at home overnight and you never see a gas station. It's that simple. Incredibly spacious, packed with the things that you want in an SUV. Cargo capacity, fits family, friends, pets, sports gear. Can handle the city all the way up to the slopes. Digital key, you can run this car from your phone. And when you choose the BZ4X, you can get up to $6,500 in rebates and incentives. You can finance a 2025 BZ4X from 0.99% APR for 36 months. Do yourself a favor. Take a test drive. Learn how easy an electric vehicle is. Visit your nearest Pacific Toyota dealer or visit shoptoyota.ca. As we welcome in the former assistant general manager of the Vancouver Canucks, NHL executive with the Jets, Coyotes, and Leafs as well, it's our friend Laurence Gilman. How are you?
I'm well, gentlemen. How are you guys doing today?
Yeah, very well. We got J-Pat in here for you today.
I see. Another one from my past.
Always a little melancholy on that final day of the regular season when you know that 16 other markets are going to be enjoying playoff hockey and, alas, none here in Vancouver.
Well, and you know it from the front office, Lawrence. So what's it like when you have a tough season here in Vancouver?
Well, at the end of the season, I mean, I didn't experience that because in every year I was with the Canucks, we made the playoffs. They didn't their drought didn't start till after I left. In any event.
Very good.
In any event, I have been
pretty good flex there from LG.
Well, I had a little fun with it. But I believe me, I have experienced my share of losing seasons and not making the playoffs in the past, prior to my experience with the Canucks. And to put it, bluntly, it sucks on the last day of the season knowing you have, it's over. There's also a little bit of relief because, to get to that point, it's just such an emotional meat grinder, and you don't just. Most teams don't just fall out of it at the end, which could happen to Montreal Canadiens tonight or tomorrow. But you're on the Bataan death march, as the expression goes, and by the time the end comes, it comes with an element of relief. But obviously in Vancouver, there's no joy in Mudville. Not for the players, not for the coaches or management, ownership. Why should it be different for the fans? It sucks when your team doesn't make the playoffs.
How should, you've been involved in these discussions, how should management approach this year-end media availability?
Well, I mean, it's always best to be forthright, candid, honest, introspective. Obviously, a lot of things that went their way last year did not go their way this year, including significant injuries to significant players. And it's appropriate for management to acknowledge that at some point when they have to be, when they face the music. I also think they need to be candid about, performance from some players wasn't what it was expected to be. I mean, that's obvious. And they have to come up with some answers as to what they intend to do going forward, if they want to have continued buy-in from their fan base. So, I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. It was a disappointing year. They had injuries. They had, off-ice issues. All of that conspired against the team. The question, is only partially why did it go the wrong way? But it also should be, what are we going to do to make it go the right way in the future?
How specific does one get there, Lawrence? Rutherford has not been shy about that in the past. We don't think he's going to be there Saturday, but how specific do you get with your off-season summer plans, your shopping list, knowing that you miss on any topic, people are going to bring it up come training camp.
Well, you have to understand your audience and know that Vancouver is a very educated, well-educated hockey market. They obviously know what the shortcomings of the team have been. They know that there needs to be improvement down the middle. And if that's not, stated as an objective for the team going forward, it should be. And you people, as I like to say, looking at you, JPAT, will I'm certain be asking that question or questions along that line. I mean, you're not going to show all your cards, but I think it's incumbent upon management to at least give some indication that they do have a plan going forward. And again, they need to have time to take stock, meet with their people. There's a lot of time between the free agency period and the draft and all the things that are going to come in the summer. But I think they need to be candid and forthright with respect to, there are things that need to be fixed here. We are the people to do it. We know what needs to be done.
Just sharpening my knives here. I've got a few days before we get the opportunity on the weekend. Look, it's likely to be a night of feels at the rink, game 82. Sort of the prevailing storyline is that this is it for Brock Boeser. End of the line, a first-round pick back in 2015 who gave this organization 10 incredible years. The mileage they got out of a guy taken deep in the first round, over 500 games. He's a top 10 goal scorer here. That said, but in some ways, Bo Horvat's already out the door. Brock Boeser likely to follow now. These guys represent failed promise, ultimately. This was a core group that looked like it was destined to do some incredible things, but it is pro sports and there are no guarantees.
Well, no, there are no guarantees. And 10 years is a pretty good run for anyone in this day and age with one franchise. And in this business, the only thing constant is change. And, and having said that, the book hasn't been sealed yet on what's going to happen with Brock Boeser. And it is possible, potentially, that they do reach agreement, although it doesn't look like it at this point. But listen, some good players have passed through that. If he leaves, some good players will have passed through that organization, particularly up front and down the middle with Bo Horvat, JT Miller. And, Brock Boeser, as I've said, not a 40 goal scorer, but a guy who scored 40 goals. And along the way, was pretty consistently relied upon to score 25 to 30. So that's a lot of goals to have given to an organization. And quite frankly, it's a lot of goals to go out and replace. And, he's someone, I don't have a whole lot of, the sum total of my experience with Brock Boeser was standing next to him in a picture after we picked him in the first draft because I was voted off the island or told my services are no longer required 5 days after that draft. But I've watched him closely from afar. He's comported himself with dignity and grace and humility. And he has been an ultimate Canuck. It's been, he's someone who, as an observer, has looked very like he's been very happy to be a member of this organization, a very strong person with lots of character. And I think the Canucks fans should be thankful that they had the opportunity to have a player with this amount of dignity and grace put, 10 years into this organization.
The story is that the Canucks have put an offer out there and they've got concern about term. And I think the concern is foot speed as he grows here. Do you think he can do better in the open market this summer than something like 8x5?
Yeah, he'll get the term. In my estimation, he'll get 6 or 7 in the open market. He might not get 7, but he could get 6. And, when going back to my time with the Canucks, we knew we had, in Daniel and Henrik Sedin, we knew we had 2 players who wanted to stay with the organization and were willing to take less at the time to stay. And the conundrum that we were faced was how hard could we push to get them to leave some money on the table without forcing them to go to the market. And I think there's similar attributes to this negotiation. And, if you're sitting in Brock Boeser's shoes and you look at the market that's out there, Mitch Marner is obviously the prime, specifically right winger that's on the market. But Brock Boeser, with 40 goals on his resume and a perennial 25 to 30 goal scorer, is going to get paid. And it will potentially be an option where term is going to be an insignificant component to that negotiation. So, could they be pushing the envelope further than they need to be? I don't know. I'm not in the room. I I watched Boeser play from afar, and I have commented or pointed out the deficiencies in his game, which are not many, but their foot speed and his ability to drive play. But you need finishers in this game, and there's an old adage, goal scorers get paid.
Besides the photo, take us back to draft weekend in South Florida, Laurence, and your memories heading into that 2015 draft and the selection of Boeser at 23rd overall.
Well, he was definitely, I said this before on the podcast here, he was definitely the guy that Jim Benning wanted. And I think Jim deserves credit in that, for that, because it was the right selection. And if you recall, it wasn't clear that he was going to be there because, there were a number of teams out there. He was his visibility level was high coming from the University of North Dakota. Boston had the 3 picks in front of us, and they didn't go Boston's way. But we thought actually that in all likelihood, Jim Benning had some insight because he had come from the Boston organization. We thought he would be gone well before we picked. And, you hear the expression all the time. We couldn't believe he was there. We were happy to claim him. But in that case, I can attest to the fact that he was highly coveted by the organization, and the organization was very happy that he was available when they made their pick.
And I can remember Blake and I in our broadcast location, and Craig Button made a beeline for us and went, guys, that's a terrific pick by your team. He's going to be a damn good NHLer. And boy, was Craig right as well. Moving forward, but staying on the draft, Laurence, they are now almost certain to pick 15th overall. Of course, there's the 1% chance they win one of the lotteries and take the jump up to number 5. There's a itty-bitty percent chance that Calgary behind them wins one of the lotteries and they slide to 16, but almost certain 98% that they're going to pick 15th overall. What kind of currency is a pick right in the middle of the first round, particularly in a draft that maybe isn't most enthusiastic in the eyes of scouts?
Well, to begin with, picking at 15 is no man's land, right? Because you don't have the benefit of at least playoff revenue if you own the team or you run the team, or the potential to maybe go on a run. And if you look at the analytics of the draft, by far the greatest players get picked in the top 7 or 8 picks. So it's are you going to get a good player at 15 if you make the pick? Yes. But and some very, very great players have been picked in the latter half of the first round, as they have in all other rounds. But in terms of your ability to move up, you're kind of hampered unless you add currency to your pick, right? And that currency comes in the form of either an additional draft pick, whether that's, let's say, a second round pick in the draft that you're in, or potentially a first round pick in another draft, or you add some additional form of capital in the form of a prospect, a young player. Like if you want to move into the top 10, and let's say hypothetically they're having a little problem with Wheelander and they get a sniff that they're not going to sign him the same way Calgary knew with Adam Fox way back in the day, maybe you put a player like that into the deal and you can move up 5, 10 spots, whatever the case may be. It's not easy. I'll tell you, it's easier to move down when you're in that position, and it might be the more prudent maneuver because many draft experts will tell you it's about getting more swings at the plate than it is about where you pick. And some team behind you may be sitting there like the Canucks were in 2015, where you are coveting a player and you're 8 spots back and you don't think that guy's going to be there, and you are willing to sweeten the pot with a pick in the second round or a prospect or whatever the case may be in order to move up and take that pick. So I could see that scenario being a lot more likely than moving up for the Canucks, who I don't know that they're necessarily giving prospects and draft picks away at this point in their cycle.
By the time the draft rolls around, the Canucks will be 2 months into their offseason. One of the prevailing storylines out here right now is Elias Pettersson's offseason training. And I don't know if we want to speak to him specifically or just in generalities, but I'm curious with your background, Laurence, if you can shed a little insight on how much an organization can lean on players to tailor their offseason, how much they do, how much control do you have over guys that you want to sort of keep under your thumb to make sure that they show up in training camp ready to hit the ground running?
Well, with a veteran player, any veteran player, you don't really have the ability to say you need to have yourself parked in Vancouver all year on working out in our gym under our eyes with our people. But I think, that there will be with any player, and you can use Pettersson as an example, a candid and again, forthright exchange between the GM, coach, the player, and whoever else is going to be in the room. And it's fair ball for the team to say, this year didn't go your way because we feel you didn't put the effort in the offseason, if that is the case. I'm speaking hypothetically here. And John Shannon, I saw the other day, spoke to this on this very podcast, and I think he was right. I think you look the player in the eye, and in the case of Pettersson, he wants to be better. He said that, and he's a proud guy, and everybody should know that, including him, the team, the fans. And I believe he's going to put the effort in the off season, and he is going to come back in better shape. And I believe he's going to have a very, very productive year next year. But management and coaching, I mean, it's always good to have the coach in the room when you're talking to a player, but lots of times the coach will have one meeting with the player and the management will have another one. But it's fair to look him in the eye and say, this year didn't go your way because of factors A, B, C, and D. And if one of them is you didn't put the effort in prior to come to the season or didn't come in the proper shape, we both know you need to do that in order to be successful next year.
Do exit meetings ever go sideways?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, when you have a player, I mean, look at the New York Rangers. I can't imagine Calvin DeHaan's going to be a very happy exit interview between him and Peter Laviolette or him and Chris Drury. I mean, when you have disgruntled players who don't feel that they were given a fair shake, I've experienced that in my career. And I've also looked players in the eye and told them, you got exactly what you deserved. And you can sit here and be pissed off all you want, but you didn't put the effort in and you weren't a complete player. And the coach, was right to not, be able to trust you, particularly in the defensive zone. And I've had that conversation with players many times. The key thing is that you're on. Players are like everybody else. They just want to be told the truth. And, there needs to be good organizations have communication. And obviously, if you're getting to that point and you have that meeting and it doesn't go well, something, there's been a disconnect somewhere. Because, a player who's not happy generally, in my experience, is that they'll let you know that. And there are meetings that take place between coaches and players and management and players all throughout the season.
Is there a Canucks exit meeting from your time here that stands out, Laurence?
None that I would disclose in this.
The statute has not expired yet.
I actually, to be very candid with you, not that I can really recall, none that stand out in my mind, but I probably will end this podcast and think about it. And
okay.
But no, I can't really think of any. Not my.
We may come back to you on that. Lastly, just based on what you said there on Wheelander, it sounds like the Canucks are playing hardball on bonuses. The kid went back to class. He's still not yet signed, isn't going to get a chance to play an NHL game. Would you be at all chilled if you're in the Canucks front office on this right now?
I always say if you're not in the room or you're not in the conversations, it's difficult to opine in it. I don't know. I mean, clearly, as an observer, it doesn't seem like this guy's in any hurry to get to the Canucks. Now, maybe that may be because the team's not going to the playoffs and he's thinking, what do I need to rush there for? He may like school. He may be happy there. He, may want to get his degree. I don't know, but the clock is, the indicators, might not be great in terms of, are we dealing with a guy who doesn't want to come here? My experience with Swedish players is that they tend to love the city of Vancouver and the organization. And one can look at the immense number of Swedes that have, thrived in Vancouver. So I'd be surprised if he doesn't want to come. But, at some point the clock will begin to tick on this issue.
Yeah. Marvelous stuff. Next week we'll have Stanley Cup playoff games going on, Laurence. So we'll discuss some of the first round series then. Thank you for this.
Great. Look forward to it, guys. Thank you.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where you turn game night into a game weekend. Book your stay here at the Wall. Enjoy an exclusive Harrison Price rate. Call 604-331-1000. Mention us by name. Some blackout dates supply based on availability. And I'm playing golf today, Jeff, so you know what that means.
That I didn't get the invite?
That too. And Bogey Juice.
It's a game night, so.
Yeah. Sure, there will be last game night of the year.
That is true.
You'll be a full participant, a full invite now.
That is true. Yes.
So you know there will be some bogeys, so you want to have some Bogey Juice with you. What is Bogey Juice? It is a tantalizing blend. Vodka, crisp apple, flavoring, kicking ginger, refreshing. Every shot of Bogey Juice like a hole-in-one for your taste buds. It's sweetened to perfection with simple syrup and very smooth with that top shelf vodka. Bogey Juice promises a fun, edgy experience that's going to leave you laughing all the way to the 19th hole. Perfect for turning your average golf day into a celebration. Can't help your scorecard, though. Raise your glass, let the good times roll. Bogey Juice, where every sip is a swing in the right direction. Find it at bogeyjuice.com. I want to shout out longtime audience member Milo from the Shaughnessy restaurant at Van Dusen Garden. We had family dinner, birthday celebration there on Saturday. Met Milo, tells me he's been joining our show going all the way back to 2011 and our 1040 days. So thank you to
Shout to
Milo. Vancouver Canadians lose their home opener 11-8 last night to Eugene on what was a picture-perfect evening for baseball. Alas, the control wasn't picture-perfect for Canadians pitchers. They issued 10 walks. Starter Fernando Perez, he fought his control, 4 runs. Shortstop Arjun Namala did not disappoint, though. Got a very nice ovation upon his first plate appearance in Nat Bailey Stadium and promptly laced a double to right center field. The crack of the bat sounded a little different with this kid. You can tell there's talent there. Incidentally, a first opportunity to see some of the Renos at the Nat. The new bullpen in left center. They got a new field. It looks absolutely glorious. Now, you'll still see the construction down the right field line. That's phase 2. That's going to be completed for next season. C's back at it tonight with an RBC We Care Wednesday and tomorrow night. The weather looks fantastic this week, so get on out to the ballpark. Reminder, can get a little cold when the sun goes down in certain areas of the stadium, so bring a blanket or dress appropriately. A Friday nooner with potentially 18 degrees.
Good Friday,
Jeff.
too. So
Good Friday.
No excuses here. You got the day off? You're looking for something to do?
Awesome activity.
Get out to the Nat.
And 1 p.m. starts Saturday and Sunday through the Easter weekend. Tickets, 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com. Bob Nightingale, sticking with baseball, of USA Today, reporting the Mariners turned down a trade for a young infielder earlier this season. The opposing team was seeking Luis Castillo, their fine starting pitcher, and there's scuttlebutt now that the M's, after losing Ryan Bliss, losing Victor Robles to long-term injuries, are sniffing around free agent JT Martinez, who's been an effective hitter over his career. The Masters, the final round television number is in, Jeff. 12.7 million viewers on CBS. It makes it the most watched golf telecast in 7 years. I know you're a huge fan. What'd you make of Rory on Sunday?
Loved it. Loved every minute of it. It was the full Rory experience for him to flash a couple of wedges on 13 into the drink and then 18 with the tournament on the line. And in between the glorious iron shots that he hit, that swooping
7-iron on 15.
On 15 and then 17, maybe the shot of his lifetime.
To 2 feet from 190 yards out. It was amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's incredible theater. As I said, it's the full Rory experience, and ultimately took him a little longer than he had probably anticipated, both in time and in terms of number of holes, but got it done in the playoff.
And a reminder, since golf season is now fully underway, it's a game of honor. You're out there for a good time. Be respectful to the course, to your playing partners, and the groups in front of and behind you. And look, if you got a little edge going on, take a shot of Bogey Juice. Don't do what happened at Two Eagles Golf Course in West Kelowna earlier this week. Jeff, there's video of it. We've got it.
I have played 2 Eagles.
A brawl breaks out. Punches are thrown. Cops are called. Look, don't hit into the group in front of you. But if someone does hit into you, it is probably accidental. I'm sure one can litigate this without fisticuffs.
I think.
Look at this.
My
shirts off.
sources in West Kelowna telling me that the fight actually was over the final swig of Bogey Juice. There's a little left in the bottle there, and they all wanted in. I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, I mean, look, it's ridiculous.
Yes.
But what do we think the scene was like on the 19th hole when they
Well,
both show up and
in
after
the parking
round
lot?
and-
Yeah. Have you ever seen physical altercation on the golf course?
I mean,
No.
I've seen guys shout at guys.
I've seen
for
guys shout. Yep.
driving it up. You know, and look, if it happens once, it's generally an accident. If it happens a couple of times, then
The civil conversation is in order.
yeah. And I've seen all of that. But no, I've never seen it come to blows, and I've never seen a guy basically knocked on his ass the way that the big dude was
Yeah.
in the video.
Yeah. Yeah. And now immortalized on social media.
Congratulations, West Kelowna.
Exactly. Went to a BC Lions event last night here at Goodco downtown. Roar as one, the new team slogan for 2025. Also a slight alteration to the Lions logo. Rob Williams is going to talk about that tomorrow. Single game tickets on sale to the public on May 1st. They announced a bunch of theme nights surrounding individual games this year. A summer camp theme night as the kids get out of school on June
Do we get to sleep over at BC
21st.
Place?
Yeah, watermelon smash for the Riders visit, a campus clash going into the school year in September, and a Wild West country night coming in October. Of course, we await the announcement of the big opening night concert. That is for the season and home opener Saturday, June 7th against the Edmonton Elks. And team president Dwayne Vanneau reporting average attendance last year of 28,000 people. They opened the upper deck in 5 of 8 games. They sold out the Lions in Langford this preseason game at Starlight Stadium in a matter of 12 minutes, 6,000 tickets sold. And spent some time last night with new head coach Buck Pierce. Great to see Buck back in black and orange. He's telling me that the kids are 10 and 7, and so no real memories of living here in Vancouver, so it's all fresh for them. Discovery, wonderment. He was beaming, smiles ear to ear, coming back to the Lions Den as head coach. Also spent some time with Sean White, heading into season number 17 for the now legendary Lions kicker.
Speaking of legendary, I saw photos of the event. Big Daddy was on
spent
hand.
some time with Big Daddy Dave Pratt as well, who looks terrific. So thank you to the Lions and Matt Baker and everyone for having us out. Vancouver Rise, history being made tonight at BC Place, everybody, as Vancouver Rise FC and Calgary Wild FC contest the first game in the Northern Super League, a domestic women's professional league here in Canada with 6 teams: Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, and Halifax. They have some pretty big name investors who have gotten behind this league. Christine Sinclair here with the Vancouver Rise, Andre DeGrasse and Milos Raonic for the Toronto franchise, Josh Morrissey, Winnipeg Jets defenseman, hometown Calgary, he's a backer there. 25 games, 25 game schedules. 28 of the games will be on television this year between TSN and CBC. Congratulations to former Canadian women's national team member and co-founder of the league, Diana Matheson, for getting the Northern Super League to this date. And
congratulations on getting to this point. I hope it's a huge success, long overdue. I don't fully grasp why they scheduled this up against a Vancouver Canucks game. Even if it is game 82,
no,
it's still 18,000 people that you take out of the potential
right
ticket buying group. Now,
is it?
Well,
maybe short of 18,000, but I hear what you're saying, Jeff.
the other thing is, and look, I totally get it. Dress it up for the first one at BC Place, but we know that that's such a cavernous stadium.
Mm-hmm.
If there isn't a bunch of people on hand. We've seen BC Lions preseason games there.
Yep.
We've seen high school football. So I hope,
Whitecaps,
I hope that they get the crowd that they're looking for. Because, of course, after this one, it's out to Swangard for the rest of the season.
That's right. And maybe building availability had something to do with it.
It's quite possible.
Yeah. Anyways, congratulations to Diana and to all these teams. Best of luck to the Rise tonight against Calgary. Well, how about this? For the last 2 months, Wednesday has been Blake's day to peacock around the studio because look at how great I did in the Safeway My NHL Picks. The first week that he's not here is the first week he has a losing record on Safeway My NHL Picks. 2-3 this week for Blake. He had Minnesota to beat Calgary. That one came in wrong. He had the Canucks to beat Minnesota. That one came in wrong. And he had Colorado to beat Vancouver. And that one came in incorrect as well. So he won't be gobbling up the scene points this week, but he's done very well for himself. And you can too with the Safeway My NHL Picks. We had a ton of fun playing the game this year. One lucky winner is going to be selected to attend the 2025-26 NHL season opener. Thank you to Safeway for being a part of Sekeres Price this season. Looking forward to playing My NHL Picks, Safeway My NHL Picks in the fall. Poll question results for the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question from Tuesday. Jeff, if Canucks management cites injuries and explaining where this season went wrong, is that an excuse or a reason? Did you see the results?
I did not.
Okay. What did the people say? Excuse or reason?
Oh, I think the people are angry, so I'm going to say they see it as an excuse.
Indeed. Percentage?
58.
64. Harley, you can't use injuries as an excuse is such a fucking cliche. Of course you can use injuries as an excuse when your top players are out. Anyone who thinks not is an idiot. VJ, injuries are not an excuse for drama, low effort, blowing leads, not showing up, and a weak leadership group. Salt and paprika. It's an excuse as that happened during the season. Roster construction and EP40 Miller feud were known problems prior to the start and not properly dealt with. Management let the team down this year. And Jay agrees with us. He says, reason, but not the reason. Errors and omissions, and that is brought to you by our friends at Ben Moss Jewelers. This is a proudly Canadian-owned and operated company with a history dating back more than 100 years. They are committed to customer satisfaction. Check out the large selection of Canadian mine diamonds. They got lab-grown diamonds, mine diamonds with payment plans to suit your needs. 5 locations in BC. Willowbrook and Langley, Coquitlam Centre, Abbotsford, Victoria, Chilliwack. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless. A few errors and omissions from yesterday. We got the goaltenders under contract thing sorted. Tolapilos and RFA. They have 6 other goalies who are under contract. And I screwed up a couple of reads yesterday.
All right.
Read the Bet 365.
You're telling tales on yourself then. This is...
Try be accountable, Jeff.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Corrections are a sign of strength, not weakness.
I just don't think there are viewers or listeners that have a wall chart of your ad
Mike
read.
Mike was hairy eyeballing me, so
Okay.
We did better on reads today. And thank you for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That is X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. Final rink-wide Vancouver of the season tonight with Jeff and Irf.
Yep.
Following the game against Vegas. Be sure to tune into that and, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. And keep it local.